Good afternoon. Pwede hindi nyo mag-mic?
Yes.
When I sit down, good afternoon again. Kanina I was about to complain because they put me at the last. And looking at the pool of speakers that you have this afternoon, I'm the only girl. But again, bawing-bawi because in a crowd of bloggers, we have a lot of women here. What do you want to talk about? Do you want me to answer a lot of the criticisms, the questions that you have? Or do you want me to share the behind the scenes of what happened a year ago when Typhoon Yolanda struck the Philippines? Behind the scenes. Behind the scenes. Sige. Okay.
On the record to off the record?
They said, when I asked my boss if I will be allowed to come here and speak and trump my trip to Geneva for the preparatory committee meeting of the World Disaster Conference that will be held in Sendai 2015, he said that you shouldn't go there because it's just a bunch of young people. And when you go to Geneva, you'll be talking to a lot of powerful decision makers from different countries. But I said, I think I need to come here because I think the most powerful tool is not just the decision makers and the leaders, but a handful of young bloggers with a Wi-Fi connection.
Off the record.
So, when I came here, no regrets because of the free Starbucks coffee, the Pink Berry, the donuts, and the chips. So allow me to start. What are the things that I want to share about what happened a year ago? So I was peacefully working in my office, the office of the president, a year ago, and I had a lot of calls 2 days after Typhoon Yolanda struck the country. So that was November 8th in the morning, and on a Sunday afternoon and evening, my phone didn't stop ringing. What happened? So I got a call saying that, hello, Madam Undersecretary, this is the Ambassador of Germany. I need a direct line to President Aquino because Chancellor Angela Merkel wants to relay her personal condolences. 5 minutes after, I got another call from the UK ambassador saying that he needs a direct line to the president because Prime Minister David Cameron wants to extend his condolences again to the president of the republic. 30 minutes after, I got a call from the Taiwanese ambassador saying that they need a landing clearance in an hour in Mactan Cebu International Airport because they have 2 C-130s full of relief goods wanting to land so that the goods can be distributed as fast as they can. And then you have a team of Israeli doctors wanting to be deployed immediately in 24 hours. So how do you now balance and prioritize all these things? 3 days after, you get calls from DOH saying that they need to deploy the body bags immediately in Region 8. And then you get the call from DSWD saying that they need to get volunteers to pack the relief goods because every day you need 1.5 million food packs to be distributed in the affected areas. So I was wondering why everybody was calling me a 33-year-old lady in the office of the president. I knew something was wrong institutionally because the lines were already blurred. People were already calling me directly when I am not from the Department of Foreign Affairs, when I am not from the Department of National Defense, nor am I from the Department of Health or the Department of Social Welfare and Development. So 3 months after, when I enter a room, people were calling me the disaster queen. I don't know if I'll be flattered or I'll be bothered. Why? Because a few years back, I was asked to put together the rehabilitation and recovery plan of Typhoon Pablo in Mindanao. So when Yolanda came, my role was to gather all the national government agencies, make sure we put together a comprehensive rehabilitation and recovery plan for Typhoon Haiyan. So when I asked my boss, and he said, Leslie, you need to go there and help Secretary Lacson put together this plan. I said, sir, I am very scared. One, I don't know Secretary Lacson. I don't know anybody from his office. And of course, you know the image and the perception of Secretary Dig. But then again, I was surprised because he was very receptive. And lo and behold, in August 1, we were able to put together an 8,000-page document in 8 volumes, covering 171 cities and municipalities in 14 provinces, over 6 regions. So we put together around 18,648 projects for all these affected areas, whether it's shelter, livelihood, social services, and permanent housing facilities for these affected areas. It's all there in a plan. So who wants to get a copy of this 8,000-page document? In fairness,
Executive summary.
they say that in government now, the products and the packaging is very boring. But when I was asked to organize a team to put together the plan, we have conceptualized a very dynamic and proactive way of disseminating information. So that 8,000-page document, that 8-volume plan is inside this USB in an 8-minute video. So later, I'll be talking about what happened, the lessons learned, the best practices, and allow me to ask you some questions. So whoever gets to answer it right will get a copy of this. The first slide will show you some of the milestones of the Comprehensive Rehabilitation and Recovery Plan. So it was approved recently, last October 29, 2014, and the total budget that was approved is 167.68 billion pesos, or roughly 3.7 billion US dollars. So we also have created a one-stop shop, and by virtue of Administrative Order number 44, we have put together a system that will fast-track the construction of houses in different provinces, because we need to construct 205,128 permanent houses in all the affected areas. Of course, we also wanted to make sure that we have used a science-based tool to ensure that those people living in hazard areas will be transferred. How do we do this? We have identified and defined safe, unsafe, and controlled zones and design for all public infrastructure. So Typhoon Yolanda was pegged at 320 km/h with a wind gustiness or wind load of 380 km/h. No amount of preparation was enough. The people weren't prepared. Even the plants, the trees, and the dogs, and the animals weren't prepared with that magnitude of typhoon. So now, every public infrastructure, schools, houses, school buildings, and health facilities should be built at 250 km/h wind load. We also have put in place a mechanism for public-private partnership. So we have realized that government cannot do it alone. So it should be a whole-of-society approach. So government's role is to make sure that when the next disaster strikes, we already know who will do what, where, and how fast we can deploy all these resources. The next slide would show you some of the concrete policy recommendations from the Comprehensive Rehabilitation Plan. Of course, you can see there an institutional mechanism on coordinating some of the initiatives at the national, local, and private sector, civil society, and other stakeholders involved in rehabilitation and recovery. We want to avoid that cycle of putting the blame on local governments. So it's high time for us to say that there is an institutional mechanism and this is how it should work. We also want to fast track some of the things that we need to be implemented on the ground. So we ensure that the procurement guidelines are already put in place during disaster situation. So the Commission on Audit has already issued a circular last April 2014, and it has highlighted some of the requirements that each agency should do to be able to procure and fast-track implementation. Of course, there's also access to funds, quick release, as well as fast-tracking the budget requirements. And importantly, we also want to highlight monitoring and evaluation frameworks for each agency, including local government units, development partners, international organizations, civil society organizations. And of course, the main topic right now is transparency and accountability. And I'm sure you want to know where all the money went. Diba? Sige. Tanungin natin si Billy kung nandun ba sa bag ko. In order to ensure that there's transparency and accountability, government was able to set up two systems. One is the faith, and the sister of faith called empathy. So I will explain to you later how it works. The next slide would show you some of the lessons learned in the previous disasters. So in the past 10 years, we have experienced, I think, 8 major disasters. Whether it's a natural disaster in the form of typhoon, or earthquake, or a human-induced disaster, as mentioned during the Zamboanga siege. International documents have already this Build Back Better principle. But recently, we have realized that it's not enough to just build back better. Because in a country that accepts and invites typhoons of 20 to 24 typhoons in a year, we need to do it faster and we need to do it safer. So what I did was I coined the term Build Back Better, Faster, and Safer. So I hope you will blog it and say, Leslie Cordero. We also talked about the upgraded in technical specification and standards. What is more revealing after Typhoon Yolanda happened was that we knew how it felt and we witnessed what it felt like to be isolated to the rest of the affected areas. For 72 hours, I think, there was no contact in the affected areas because there was power blackout, there was no communication because all cell sites were down. Maybe after 48 hours, you can hear and see Atom Aralio reporting already. But at the end of the day, we have learned that there should be redundancy in power, transportation, and communication. Aside from that, we also need relevant and readily available baseline data. If we need to geotag to know the number of schools, the number of hospitals, the number of public infrastructure in the area, then let's do it. We also need to know the demographics of the people in these affected areas. And government should not be too arrogant to say that we have the monopoly of data. Because I think if there are civil society organizations, NGOs, or even private companies who have more relevant and accurate surveys or up-to-date surveys, then by all means we need to tap that. Why am I saying this? Because we have our NSO census, and the data that Mayor Alfred Romualdez in Tacloban has, aside from the census, to know the foot traffic in the area during daytime did not come from the government data. It came from a survey that was conducted by McDonald's. And I think it's more accurate because, you know why? Aside from that, we also need to have a better information dissemination during, after, and even before a disaster. And when you say better information dissemination, it's not enough for government officials to say that there is a typhoon, there is a storm surge, or there is an earthquake. We need to explain it in a language that is understood by the people and embraced by the communities. So kung kailangan in Bisaya, kung kailangan in Chabacano, or kailangan in Tagalog, then by all means, let's do it. Diba? We also learned that it is not enough to just preposition goods, assets, and resources. We need to find safer areas because swear to God, government was prepositioning these goods. There were stockpiles already in place, coming from ASEAN, the AHA Center, coming from UN, and all the other agencies in UN. But they were all washed away by the storm surge. So again, it's important to find the safer areas. After hearing all these lessons learned, akala natin hindi natin kaya mag-compete. We also have best practices. The next slide will show you that institutionalized public information or early warning systems are already in place. I think everyone will agree na our pag-asa, our PBOK is getting better in terms of giving us early warning. So kung may typhoon, people will have enough lead time to evacuate. Talking about strengthened partnership and enhanced coordination, I've discussed that already. Adopting the government cluster framework in rehabilitation and recovery. So this is something new because for how many disasters, government has adopted an ad hoc stance. So kada disaster na lang, the president will appoint an official or a cabinet secretary to lead the team who will handle rehabilitation and recovery. I think it's high time for us to institutionalize this by adopting this cluster framework. So for infrastructure, livelihood, social services, and resettlement, we have key cabinet secretaries in key agencies leading this framework. We also have the enhanced accountability and transparency systems. We have the FAITH. The FAITH is the Foreign Aid Transparency Hub. So this was done to make sure that money being pledged and being received by government from different countries is well documented. So this is during the humanitarian or relief phase. Now in the early recovery and rehabilitation phase, we have set up the empathy. As I've mentioned, it's the sister of faith, and empathy means electronic monitoring platform, accountability and transparency in the Yolanda affected areas. So empathy. Ulit, electronic monitoring platform, accountability, transparency, hub in Yolanda affected areas. So mamaya we can discuss that further. We want to make sure that this platform is accessible, not just to government officials and staff. We want it to be functional and people in affected areas or ordinary people like you and me can access it because there's a public user interface. We want na when government will say that this national government agency is putting in 5 billion pesos or 5 million pesos for a road project in this barangay in Bantayan, Northern Cebu, people from Bantayan will be able to take pictures and say that what government is reporting is not true. Because in that empathy framework or platform, you can see the area, the beneficiary, the amount of money that is put in that project, who received it, start of the project, start date, as well as date of completion. And the agency gets to update. For example, DPWH would say that for the road project that I have mentioned, it is already 50% completed. And somebody from Bantayan takes a picture, uploads it, and says, hindi yan totoo. Because it's not 50% completed. That road project, we saw, this is the picture. Because it's already 90% completed. So, di ba? You have the opportunity to be able to dispute governments and help government monitor and evaluate how fast we are doing in the rehabilitation and recovery efforts. Every day you get to hear in the news kung ano yung mali na ginagawa from the emergency and response phase until now sa early recovery and rehabilitation phase. You get to hear about the relief goods being spoiled. You get to hear about the money being misused. And you get to hear how slow it is. Pero, when I was invited in the World Reconstruction Conference to present what Philippines is doing. In a room full of 50 speakers that was, I think, 50 years old and above, and mostly male-dominated, I was so proud to say that, by far, Philippines has the fastest in terms of putting together a comprehensive rehabilitation and recovery plan. And who were these countries involved? Myanmar was there, Thailand was there, US was there to talk about Katrina, Indonesia was there to talk about Banda Aceh. And when we were comparing some of the indicators, Philippines by far has the fastest record. Because in July 4, 2014, we have already declared an end to the relief or humanitarian phase. So that was 8 months after, when UN has pegged it for a year in terms of the humanitarian and relief phase. So Sec Dinky said that we are ending the humanitarian relief phase sa July 4. And by August 1, Secretary Lacson was able to submit that 8,000-page, 8-volume document of the Comprehensive Rehabilitation Plan. So if there's one thing that I want to ask from you, is to help disseminate this positive news and help dispel the negative issues that a lot of people are talking about. And if there's one thing that government is remiss or is lacking, I would say that government needs to do a better job in communicating all the things that we are doing so that more people will know and appreciate not just what government is doing, but what everybody is doing for the whole rehabilitation and recovery efforts of the Yolanda. So a year after, people are asking me, are you satisfied? Of course, my answer is not. Because for every victim, survivor, or every citizen who contributed money, effort, or goods to help in the rehabilitation effort, no amount of excuse or comment from government is enough, except to say sorry. Because we could do it faster, we could do it better, and we could do it safer. So I hope you will help us. And we have prepared a Yolanda anniversary music video. It is entitled, We Will Rise Again. And again, for the first time, government produced something like this to be given to important people. So ang ginawa ko, nagnakaw ako ng isa, and I said, I'll give this to one of you who will be able to answer the question later. Sige, so are you ready? Sige. Ready? Ayan. But before I do that, thank you very much. I know I'm over time. I asked you to do one thing. We've been talking about zero casualty principle in terms of a disaster. We're talking about build back better, faster, and safer. I think after seeing all of you being very enthusiastic, being energetic, and participating in every talk, I am positive na whatever will happen years after, or whenever the next disaster strikes, Philippines will be very ready. Because I think 10 to 20 years from now, when you will be calling the shots, when you will be making that important decision, we will all be better off because you were here, you heard all the discussions, you heard all the debates, and later on you will be blogging about it. So before I go, I'll ask you to do one thing. Look at the person to your left, the person to your right, the one in front of you, and the one behind you. I-memorize nyo yung faces, yung names, at anong school. floor, most of us were talking about all of you who are seated on the floor. And we feel that the vision is to make each one of you better than all of us at that couch. And when that time will come, we'll all be certain that we will be able to say, finally, the vision has outlived the visionaries. So on that note,